Su Hong had the talent to enter martial arts, but poverty was about to bury his future. With the entrance exam only 3 months away, his school demanded a 30,000 yuan registration fee. That amount might sound manageable to rich students, but for Su Hong, it was basically impossible. He worked every spare hour, yet 7 days was nowhere near enough time to earn it. His teacher refused to bend the rules, leaving him trapped between talent and an empty wallet. Then one desperate decision triggered something that would completely rewrite his fate. A mysterious system awakened, turning ordinary effort into rewards no normal student could imagine. Every challenge could now become martial points, and every point could accelerate his growth. The poor student everyone overlooked was about to evolve into the academy's greatest nightmare. And before this journey ended, even elite geniuses would question whether Su Hong was human. Classmates, there are only 3 months left until the college entrance exam. If you choose martial arts, the registration fee is 30,000 yuan. My blood energy levels were among the top in the class. Teacher, can I turn in the registration fee a few days late? Usually, only the top 3 had a real shot at getting into a martial arts university. He had 2 children of his own, and both were practicing martial arts, too. Su Hong, it's not that I don't want to help you, Li Ming said gently. You know, you don't have to go through the exam to practice martial arts. The resources at a university compared to a private dojo were like heaven and earth. As I stepped out of the school building, the sun hit my face. Martial arts awakened, and then animals of Earth evolved into monsters that ravaged humanity. Now those dreams were being strangled by a 30,000 yuan entry fee. I realized I had walked all the way to the gym without thinking. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the moon took its place. Damn, Su Hong, your raw punch got stronger again. In martial arts, mastery is divided into 5 levels. Shenlin gave me a thumbs up, his eyes full of respect. Are you kidding? Shenlin groaned, looking at the clock. I need to eat. He'd been trying to sneak out since 5, but I kept him pinned here. I'm finished for the day. He started to pack his bag, then leaned in close, lowering his voice. You're not thinking of fighting, are you? I just meant we should go see what real combat looks like. By the time I showered and walked out of the school, it was midnight. I reached my apartment complex, a cluster of old decaying buildings, and headed to my door. We have to pay a full year at once. My unclade. She's at a critical point with the exams coming up. But the neighbors said the registration fee for the martial arts dream is expensive. My uncle must have walked to the window to smoke. It would save so much. And Xiao Hai and Xiaoming are in middle school now. Your health is too poor for that. My uncle snapped, his voice thick with emotion. The kids will have what they need to eat. I stood in the dark hallway, my heart feeling like it was being squeezed by a giant hand. As long as I'm here, this family won't fall. We don't want to wake Xiao Hai or Xiaoming, and Xiao Hong should be home any minute. I took a deep breath, forced a smile onto my face, and pushed the door open. The moment they saw me, the worry on their faces vanished. Auntie, let me do it. Oh, you filial brat. Shunshin teased, poking my forehead. After the patch was on, Su Guoming stood up and patted my shoulder. He raised a hand as if to swamp me, but I laughed and ducked away, running into my room. That kid. But as soon as he took a step, his face twisted in pain. I shared the other with my brother Xiao Hai and my sister Xiaoming. My siblings shared one, and I took the bottom bunk of the other. I'm awake, too, Xiaoming added, her head popping out from under her blanket. I want to quit school and help him move cargo. Me, too, Xiaoming whispered. I can help Dad so he can finally rest. What did you say? Shia Hai hissed. I realized they had heard everything our aunt and uncle said. But brother, we aren't talented in martial arts like you. You can focus on the exams, get into a martial arts university, and become a professional warrior. They were too sensible for their own age, and it hurt to hear. I've already found a way to handle the registration fee and the rant. Their eyes lit up. I reached out and gave him a quick flick on the forehead, making him yelp. I walked back out and stood on the narrow balcony, staring at the night sky. With my mastery of the Vidra fist, I had a chance. The moment I made my decision, a crisp electronic chime echoed in my brain. I had been in this world for 18 years and had given up hope on such a thing. I took a deep breath and felt a new power surging through me. I closed my eyes and started digging into this system. I could use those points to increase my blood chi, my physical constitution, or my martial arts proficiency. A sleek translucent screen flickered to life in front of me. In this world, there was another path besides being a martial artist, the spirit master. They were terrifyingly strong, and only one person in a million had the talent for it. Some lucky people were born with special bodies that let them train 10 times faster than normal. I took a second to breathe, then checked the description for my new talent. Suddenly, my eyes snapped open. Every single confusing detail, every block I'd hit for months. I thought about the floating light palm and the sky tread step. It felt like being an adult asked to solve 1 plus 1. Before at entry level, I could barely kick the air to slow a fall. As I stepped out into the empty air, it felt like my foot hit solid concrete. I looked down at my feet, then back at the ground, completely stunned. As I stood there, a chime rang in my head. Even if this was just a rank 1 technique, mastering it in a single breath was insane. If I catch you, I'm going to shove a firework up your winced and scratched my head. I hit the ground as light as a feather and slipped toward the complex gates. I looked back at our crumbling apartment one last time. My uncle wouldn't have to work himself to death. Before I was going to the underground fights because I was desperate. I noticed 2 new rank 1 combat testers at the edge of the field. In this world, rank is determined by blood chi, but actual combat power depends on your techniques. Usually, a person's combat power is about 10 times their blood chi. The rank 1 movement technique, step into vacuity, had already reached the entry level. I remembered it being at 7% just a moment ago. If I just kept going, I could reach the perfection level in minutes. By the third punch, a massive surge of power radiated from my body. I poured every ounce of my focus into the movements. I had taken an earth-raid martial art from basic entry to absolute perfection in 10 minutes. I stepped back up to the rank 1 combat tester. I settled into my stance and unleashed a Vudra fist exactly like before. If I had broken it, there was no way I could afford the repairs. So, the middle of the night was the only time he could sleep. In his mind, no actual rank 1 martial artist would use a public training ground like this. "Hey kid," Lu Foam shouted, stopping in his tracks when he saw the machine leaning against the wall. "You expect me to believe you moved a multi-tona machine to the wall just by testing it? I'm telling you, I didn't move it," I said, my voice turning cold. Even he couldn't send the machine flying, and I looked like a high school student. He looked at the screen, then at my face, then back at the screen. Lu Fong felt a sudden chill run down his spine. I shook my head, figuring I'd just run into a crazy person, and turned back to the display. That was nearly the level of a rank 1 mid-stage martial artist. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, watching me through the window with lingering fear. By 500 a.m., the field was filled with the sound of sonic booms. Named Su Hong Bloodchi 85. I squeezed my fist, feeling the raw power vibrating under my skin. Even though my blood chi was only 85, my combat power was now equal to a mid-stage rank 1 martial artist. Apprentices fought apprentices, practitioners fought practitioners, and rank 1 martial artists faced their own kind. "Su Hong, training hard is good, but you shouldn't stay out all night," my aunt said during breakfast. "You have to take care of your body." "I feel great," I said, smiling as I stuffed a steamed bun into my mouth. My younger brother, Su Hai, looked like he wanted to make a joke, too. Before I could even react to Su Ying's teasing, my aunt reached out and pinched her ear. We finished breakfast amidst the laughter. "Mom, Dad, we're heading to school now," Su Hai called out. "Our family doesn't go looking for trouble, but we aren't afraid of it either." Su Ming chirped, her voice long and playful. "You don't bully others, but you beat me up every chance you get," he thought. Except for Su Ming, as soon as we walked out of the apartment complex. "I won't grow tall if you keep doing that," Su Ming protested. Su Hai looked up at me, his eyes searching mine. "If there's no way, we'll just drop out of school and help out at home." They knew that when I used that tone, I meant it. Watching them return to their usual lively selves, I felt a weight lift off my chest. Not for fame or power, but to see my family smile like this. "You're going to miss out on watching real martial artists go at it." I thought I'm going to fight. I didn't need them worrying more than they already were. Our homeroom teacher, Li Ming, shouted as he walked in. The class erupted into cheers and sprinted for the gym faster than they usually ran for lunch. I was afraid of not having enough of them to learn a grade C technique. Heck, I might even be brave enough to step into the underground ring myself. Most of them have mastered their techniques to the perfection level. He paused, then patted my shoulder with a mischievous glint in his eye. "I'll place the bets, and we'll split the winnings 50 over 50. Over at the school gate, Principal Lai Chang-shan was waiting. I should have stayed at the hotel and waited for you to send a limo. Chinchin was the rank 3 master the principal had invited. I got tea, the principal said, pulling out 2 plastic bottles from his bag. Chin Tian stared at the bottled iced tea. You want it or not? The principal said, his smile fading. As for actual rank 1 martial artists, only 2 and they just broke through. Any talented kids when it comes to learning techniques. Even if I teach it, barely anyone is going to learn a thing. With the quality of these kids, maybe those 2 rank 1 practitioners can learn it. My focus is on the 2 rank 1s and the dozen quasi-practitioners. This is the most I can do for them. We watched as the 2 men walked into the gym. He's here to teach you a powerful technique. Thunderous applause broke out. I saw the envy and jealousy in the eyes of the students around me. The kids in the genius class just puffed out their chests, soaking in the attention. How much you learn depends entirely on you. He dropped into a stance. The genius class students immediately started mimicking his movements. As a rank 1 himself, this was a massive chance for him to grow. 2. At the great success level, 7, which is where I am now. He pulled back his fist and stood tall. And if you reach perfection, that's 9 sounds. They had the form, but none of the spirit. 10 seconds to memorize, Chinchin said. How are we supposed to learn this? By the time we find space to practice, I'll have forgotten everything. Shunlin turned to look at me, but I wasn't there. He scanned the room and caught a glimpse of my back disappearing through the gym's back door. He remembered me asking for an extension on my school fees and figured I had finally lost my spirit. Grade C martial arts doesn't seem that hard, I muttered to myself. I threw myself into the rhythm, my body moving with a fluid, violent grace. Moments later, 3 cracks of thunder exploded in quick succession. Chun Shan and Lu were locked in a silent rivalry, ignoring everyone else. Chun Shan and Li Tu have the best talent. If his 2 best students could pull it off, his efforts wouldn't be wasted. If the geniuses couldn't do it, the ordinary students didn't stand a chance. He turned to gloat at Shin Shan, but at that exact moment, another boom echoed. The other students in the genius class felt a wave of despair. Even though they were talented, the gap between them and those 2 felt like an ocean. I guess grade C really is on a different level compared to the D and E ranks. Chun Tian finished his 10 demonstrations, and Principal Lai Chengzan's face fell. Aside from Chun Shan and Li Tu, not a single other student had managed to learn the technique. It was a bitter pill to swallow, being outclassed by 2 teenagers from the genius class. Man, Chin Shan and Li Tu are on another level, he muttered under his breath. This is a total waste of time. Our class teacher, Lai Ming, overheard him. In this school, only Chin Shan and Lu truly mattered. Chin Tian, the rank 3 martial artist, was actually sweating. Those 2, Shin Shan and Li Tu, they've got it. Then I'll take you out for a big dinner. Chinchin just shook his head and laughed. Without a massive stroke of luck, hard work alone couldn't bridge it. In a clearing in the distance, a lone student in a school uniform was practicing. He didn't expect a student from the ordinary classes to start practicing so soon after the lecture. 7 thunderclaps exploded across the clearing in rapid succession. He spun around staring at the boy in the distance. I just finished teaching it, and he's already reached the great success stage. He watched my movements, his expression shifting from shock to confusion and finally to total fascination. A flash of realization hit him like a lightning bolt. Right there on the spot, Chun Tian began practicing the thunderclap fist himself. Then, with a burst of newfound understanding, he threw one more punch. He never imagined he'd find his breakthrough by watching a high school student in a back alley. You told me you could only hit 7. I bought you that expensive tea, and you didn't even show my students the full version. I came all this way to teach for you, and you're complaining. Oh, you just broke through? The principal didn't notice Chinchan's panic. He actually swung and punched the principal right in the eye. Ow. You said this school didn't have any top-tier talent, Shinchan said, his voice low. Is a student who can hit 9 thunderclaps considered best we've got? They're a freaking monster, and everyone nearby immediately noticed the change. By the time he finished, the principal's legs went weak. He stared at the sky like he'd lost his mind. He moved like a blur, leaving after images behind as he sprinted toward the clearing. I wasn't there anymore, but the student turned around. Quick, show me the thunderclap fist. When he finished, Chunlin looked at the principal with a sudden spark of hope. Maybe he was a secret genius. a hidden dragon. He looked at Chunlin's expectant face, opened his mouth to speak, and then just shut it. He didn't want to hurt the boy's feelings, so he just gave a half-hearted shrug. He watched the principal rush off and felt a surge of fury go. The principal saw my thunderclap fist and immediately called a staff meeting. He wanted to say something to tell the kid he was delusional, but he stopped himself. "Principal, are you planning to punish them?" He didn't want to add more weight to my shoulders. Even the genius student Chin Shan could barely grasp the basics after 10 viewings. "Let's start with you, Lai Ming," the principal said, pointing a finger. "Su Hong, tell me about him." Lemming thought for a moment. But as for Strange, well, he's been stressed about the 30,000 yuan registration fee for the martial arts exam. A genius who can hit 9 echoes in an afternoon wouldn't be crying over 30,000 yuan. Meanwhile, I was sitting in the cafeteria shoveling food into my mouth while staring at my system panel. My blood chi was at 85, and my thunderclap fist had reached the perfect realm, joining my other skills. He kept watching the hallway as other students were called into the principal's office one by one. "Hey, Su Hong, you sure you don't want to come to the underground fights tonight?" I wanted to fight. 2 hours later, the sun had set. The moment the elevator doors opened, a wave of heat and noise hit me. A martial trainee win was worth 1,000 blue star coins. If you won the trainee tournament, there was a 30,000 yuan bonus. Does the prize change? She leaned in, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "You don't get the per-match win money." She handed me a contestant badge and pointed toward the bloodchi testing station. I reached the machine and placed my hand on the sensor. I felt a bit confused, but he quickly explained that many fighters didn't want to show their real faces. They provided masks and headgear for anyone who wanted to stay anonymous. A group of fighters was huddled around a combat power tester, shouting and cheering. Most of them had power ratings between 1,000 and 1,200. These guys hadn't even reached 90 bloodchi yet, which usually meant a power level around 800. I surged forward, my movements a blur as I leaped past them and landed firmly on the stage. I announced, my voice echoed through the stadium. In the student section, Chunlin, Li Tu, and the others looked completely lost. Once someone nearby explained that I had to fight everyone until the end, Lu's jaw dropped. He's going to regret missing this so much he won't be able to sleep tomorrow. A middle-aged man roared as he jumped onto the stage. He flew backward, tumbling off the stage and landing hard on the floor. I had shown him mercy by just knocking him out of bounds without injuring him. I was here for the money, not to start blood feuds. Seeing a guy get kicked off the stage before he could finish a sentence was rare. He's been the champion for 7 days straight. As the crowd roared, a notification popped up in my mind. I blocked out the noise and looked down at the remaining fighters. "Hey, thanks for going easy on my brother just now. As a reward, I'll try not to hurt you too much." He closed the distance in 3 steps and threw a punch that whistled through the air. Fearing he might kill me, he tried to pull his punch back slightly. He tried to roar and put his full weight into it, but I was faster. He sat there, dazed, feeling the lingering warmth on the floor where his brother had just been sitting. He realized then that if I had wanted to, I could have shattered his ribs. One by one, over a dozen fighters charged the stage. White Mustache was standing calmly over his 5th opponent, as expected of White Mustache. I had a lot of work to do and a lot of debt to pay. If that was true, he was at the exact same level as my Vajro fist. Suddenly, a sharp whistle of wind cut through the air behind me. If I hadn't dodged, I'd be a corpse on the floor right now. They started shouting about how he had won yesterday's championship by blindsiding his opponents and intentionally crippling them. The fight started the moment you stepped onto the stage, and the rules were written in blood. He tried to tilt his head and throw a counterpunch, but he was too slow. A jagged shard of white bone poked out into the open air. He tried to open his mouth to surrender, but I reached out and snatched his chin. He tried to crawl away, his legs shaking as he scrambled toward the edge of the ring. "Wasn't that what you liked?" I didn't hesitate. I drove my foot into his chest. I pulled my leg back and stood in the center of the ring. In the stands, my classmates were a different story. Some of them clutching their stomachs and gagging. I took a deep breath, forced the nausea down, and looked toward the waiting area. In the trainee waiting room, the other fighters were paralyzed. They realized that if they stepped onto that stage, they might never leave it. It's not worth it. One by one, the other trainees followed him. As I walked into the back hallway, the woman from the registration desk approached me. I didn't think I'd be wrong about you, she said, her voice sounding a bit more playful. I kept walking until I reached the heavy iron door on the far side of the hall. She had joked earlier that a trainee could move up to the higher rank fights if they weren't afraid of dying. Most people didn't understand the gap between a trainee and a pre-martial artist. I pushed open the heavy door and stepped into the pre-martial artist waiting room. The fighters in there recognized me as the winner of the trainee ring. He sent his opponent flying out of the ring with a single strike, sending the crowd into a frenzy. He was so strong that most of the other pre-martial artists were already deciding not to challenge him. I looked over and saw a young man leaning against the wall, his arms crossed. I thought the fighters in Star City's underground would be tough, he continued, mocking the room. If you think White Fox is weak, why don't you get up there and prove it? I'll show you the difference between a frog in a well and a real warrior. The crowd, thinking the show was over, roared with new excitement. He raised his fist to counter, but the moment their knuckles met, a loud bang echoed. He closed the distance instantly. He was blown backward like a rag doll, coughing up blood as he crashed onto the floor outside the ring. We had just learned the basics of this technique in school this morning, but seeing it in a real fight was terrifying. Even the school geniuses, Li Tu and Qin Shan, had only barely scratched the surface of the entry level. Liang stood in the center of the ring, looking around with a sneer. The local fans started screaming insults, but Li Ming just laughed. If a rank 1 fighter stepped down to fight him, it would be seen as bullying. Back in the waiting room, the pre-martial artists were fuming, but they were terrified. They saw me, the kid in the bull mask, gesturing for them to clear the path. I just leaped over them and walked straight toward the stage. On the stage, Ling was about to walk away when he saw me. I was a trainee challenging a guy who had mastered a grade C technique. I simply raised my hand and curled my fingers, signaling him to come at me. To them, I was a dead man walking, but they didn't know why I was here. Even rank 1 martial artists might have struggled against Li Ming. He muttered that it was a shame I wasn't there to see this. I could tell he was planning to jump in and save me the second things got ugly. He thought a basic strike was enough to crush me. His body rocked back, and he was forced to take a step to stabilize himself. People were leaning over the railings, their eyes nearly popping out of their heads. Even Shinlin was scratching his head, muttering that he would have been sent flying if he were in my shoes. A martial apprentice had just survived a head-on clash with him and then had the audacity to offer a compliment. His blood chi erupted and the air began to crackle. It was a roar. 13699E thunderclaps exploded in rapid succession. He sprayed blood into the air and collapsed out cold before he hit the canvas. The referee stood there like he'd been struck by lightning himself. 9 claps meant the perfect realm of the thunderclap punch. They had been praised as geniuses for learning the move after watching it 10 times. But compared to me, they felt like nothing. Nobody wanted to fight a monster who had mastered a grade C technique to the perfect realm. As I walked through the waiting room, the trainees parted like the Red Sea. They watched my back with awe, wondering where a freak of nature like me had come from. I counted it carefully. 60,000 for the apprentice circuit, 100,000 for the trainees, 160,000 total. The woman tried to grab my arm, her eyes sparkling. I changed back into my school clothes, bundled up to hide my identity, and slipped into the cool night air. I had 67 martial points stored up from the 4 people I defeated tonight. It seemed the stronger the opponent, the bigger the reward. It sounded small, but normal training would take weeks to get that much. If I used them all, I could break through to the trainee rank right here on the sidewalk. When I dumped 20 points in at once, my muscles began to ache and swell. An invisible ripple exploded from my body, rushing outward in every direction. Fallen leaves on the pavement caught the draft, swirling into the air like a localized storm. My physical body felt denser, tougher, and more refined. I looked at my remaining martial points and dumped every last one into my blood chi. I pulled it out and saw the name on the screen, Songfeng Thunder Dojo. For a 100 credits an hour, I let people use me as a human sandbag. Su Hong. It's almost 10. Even though I didn't need the pocket change anymore, I'd given my word. I wanted to see exactly how much stronger I'd become after the breakthrough. He was thrilled that the training field had emptied out early for once. The guard bolted upright, his head slamming into the ceiling with a loud crack. He shoved the door open, ready to scream at whoever was making the noise. People like that usually trained at elite schools or private gyms. The screen was glowing bright in the dark, but the field was empty. He was cursing under his breath until his eyes caught the numbers on the display. His jaw dropped so far he could have swallowed a light bulb. Then he slapped himself again, the sound echoing through the empty night. I walked toward the Raging Thunder dojo, feeling pretty satisfied with that number. He waved me over as soon as he saw me. It's a grade C spear technique. For a martial artist, a good alloy weapon combined with the right technique could multiply their lethality. Over 200 square meters of polished floors and mirrored walls. About a dozen other martial artists were already there stretching and chatting. I could have mastered the basics by now. The instructor is Jiang Ming, a rank 3 martial artist. We've been here for 6 days and none of us have even reached the entry level. I figured he could tag along. We might not be experts, but we've been watching him for a week. A young man stumbled in, his clothes torn and stained with fresh blood. His clothes were shredded and soaked with fresh blood. The martial artists around me bristled, their brows furrowing in collective anger. He's got a big mouth for someone who looks like a used rag. Thinks he's better than everyone in Star City just because he's from the capital. What are you losers whispering about? One of the older martial artists stood up, a sneer on his face. Lai Ming's face went from pale to a deep, angry purple. He was a rank 3 martial artist, his hands tucked behind his back as he stared out at the city. That boy. I brought you both from Yang City to challenge the geniuses of Star City's high schools. To Jiang Ming, lying going to underground fights was like a professional athlete bullying kids in a playground. Lean, go find him and bring him back. Did you pick a fight with a rank 1 martial artist? He didn't want to admit it, but under his teacher's piercing gaze, he had no choice. A genius like that wouldn't be wasting time in an underground ring. He had hired a master who had studied the thunderous punch for decades to teach his disciples. But now a mere trainee had used the perfect stage of the punch to dismantle his student. Once you're better, you and Li Yin will challenge the students at Star City High. Lai Ming looked up, a spark of ambition returning to his eyes. When do we start the challenge? Lin asked. I think that's when Star City High has its monthly exams. We'll show up and crush them in front of everyone. The other martial artists were getting restless, grumbling about the instructor's lack of respect. Instead, he looked at the men sitting on the floor and barked, "What are you waiting for?" I stood at the very back, my fingers wrapping around the cold wood of the weapon. The other martial artists scrambled to follow, their movements clumsy and frantic. By the time Jiang Ming finished the first round, a notification echoed in my mind. It was slightly harder than the thunderous punch, but only slightly. How much you've learned is up to you now, he said coldly. What the hell was that? One man spat, slamming his spear down. I just saw the spears spinning like a damn firewheel, he muttered. A normal person couldn't learn anything from that. My Raging Sea spear technique was already at the micro level. All I needed was a little more practice, and I'd hit perfection. Hey kid, you and your friend should join us, he called out. I was about to decline, but a thought stopped me. He was being kind, moving slowly so I could follow. His spear flew out of his hands and clattered across the floor. Sorry about that, I said, feeling a bit awkward. The man asked, picking up his weapon with a look of pure wonder. You watched him 3 times, and you can already disarm me. They had been struggling for a week, and I had surpassed them in 9 minutes. Song just stood there, jaw dropped, wondering when his average friend had become a martial arts prodigy. To me, these were walking bags of points. The next hour was a blur of motion. My points climbed rapidly, hitting 35 inches no time. Whatever it is, it's incredible, he said, holding out his spear. I looked at their expectant faces, including the kind man who had offered to help me earlier. As I moved, the air seemed to hiss. The spear was like a dragon diving into the ocean, powerful and relentless. By the end of the 3rd round, I checked my panel again. I gripped the wood of the spear, feeling the power thrumming in my arm. The sound of a crashing wave following his spear tip. It was like a spark in a powder keg. I got it too, Song Fei shouted, his face red with excitement. For the first time in a week, they weren't frustrated. By the time the 7th martial artist successfully executed the technique, I slowly lowered my spear. As Song F's sparring partner was up, I looked at Song Fei. She paid me to be her human punching bag. The group of martial artists lowered their spears, their faces filled with a sense of wonder. Young man, Su Hong, right? One of them said, his voice thick with gratitude. I have some for you too, another added, reaching for his wallet. Su Hong, don't feel bad about taking it, one of them said firmly. I nodded my thanks and walked out of the hall as they waved me goodbye. Song looked at the closed door and shook her head with a bitter smile. She knew that the word genius didn't even begin to describe what I had done today. A genius who can master a grade C technique to the micro level in less than an hour. They stood there, feeling like they were waking up from a dream. My teacher taught you for 7 days straight. 7 days. The martial artists didn't take it lying down this time. Do you think we're blind to his laziness? They're saying someone taught them for 30 minutes, and it was better than your entire week. The gym owner was a rank 3, sure, but he was a saber user. He paused, a sneer forming on his lips. Jiang Ming let out a mocking laugh. Every martial artist I had just helped was now fuming. As the sound of crashing waves echoed through the room, Lian's pupils shrank. She actually learned it. Jiang Ming was stunned for a second, but he quickly masked it with arrogance. And if you think she's just talented, what about us? Your comprehension is too low for Heil techniques. The sound of the tide filled the hall as 6 different martial artists executed the forms with perfect entry-level precision. He taught us for 30 minutes and we mastered it. He tried to find words, but they failed him. A quasi-martial artist who had never even touched a spear before tonight. The sound of the ocean roaring louder than before. A quasi-martial artist never touched a spear micro-level in one night. She had taken 2 days to reach the entry level, and she had been called a genius for it. He went through the names of the top high school prospects, the sons of powerful families, the rising stars. If he's really a student from this city, we'll cross paths eventually. Song Fei was probably exaggerating, reaching the micro level in less than 30 minutes. I walked down the dim street, the yellow glow of the street lamps casting long shadows behind me. In this world of martial arts, strength truly was everything. I looked at the bulging bag and felt a cold determination settle in my chest. Back at the martial arts hall, I had focused on teaching others, so my spear technique hadn't progressed. I realized I needed to buy a proper alloy weapon soon. You can't absorb the energy of heaven and earth because it's too violent for a weak body. I didn't hesitate and dumped all 35 points into my vitality. My blood began to churn, racing through my veins like a mountain stream. I was only 4.8 points away from becoming a rank 1 martial artist. The top 10 students got rewards and the combat would definitely give me points. The city lord is calling for martial artists to hunt them down. Plus, I thought back to the moment I killed Lin Ping in the ring. Across town in our cramped, aging apartment complex, my uncle Su Guoming was limping home. He moved slowly, his face twisted in pain as he clutched his lower back. After a moment of silent frustration, he gripped the railing and began the slow, agonizing ascent. He nodded, his heart aching with a mix of pride and guilt. They had hoped to get an advance on his salary. Just then, the sound of a key turned in the lock. I walked in, unable to hide the grin on my face. Don't tell me you actually broke through and became a quasi-martial artist. He knew how hard it was to raise vitality when you were poor. They scrambled up, rubbing their backsides, eyes wide. My uncle and aunt were beaming, their smiles coming from the bottom of their hearts. Earlier that day at work, he had chatted with some colleagues who also had kids in school. He felt a deep sense of shame, thinking he was dragging me down. Xia Hai, Xiaoming, uncle, aunt, come here for a second, I said with a mysterious grin. Don't tell me you have a surprise for us. It's definitely a surprise. I laughed. The small dining table was practically buried under the sea of bills. For a family like ours, this much cash was something they had never seen in their entire lives. After I broke through and became a quasi-martial artist, the principal saw my potential. They let out a massive sigh of relief and their smiles became genuine again. From now on, I'll be the one to carry this family. She covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face as she looked at me. My uncle and aunt stayed up talking in their room, their voices full of wonder and relief. The next morning at breakfast, my uncle and aunt pushed the money back toward me. They kept trying to persuade me to take more, so I eventually just bolted out the door. About 10 kilometers outside Star City sat a martial artist base. It was built shortly after the city was founded to provide services for hunters venturing into the wilderness. The building had massive transparent glass walls offering a clear view of the wasteland outside. Near the exit to the wilderness, hunters were trickling back in, covered in blood and grime. The staff would dump out the ears, identifying the species and rank. The note at the bottom was clear. With my current strength, Tier 1 low levels would be easy pickings. 10 of them meant 10,000 coins. I headed for the exit to the wilderness, but the line was long. A team of 5 Tier 1 martial artists was walking past everyone, led by a cocky-looking young man. The arrogant guy smirked and led his team through the gates. His uncle, Yi, was a Tier 3 martial artist and the head of this entire base. Finally, it was my turn at the gate. After walking a dozen meters, my boots hit the soil of the wilderness. The air out here was sweet and fragrant, a sharp contrast to the city. A second later, a person stepped out from the brush. I had been walking for a while now and hadn't seen a single beast. I kicked off the air itself with a sudden burst of power. It was a wolf 2 m long with tusks curved like crescent moons. Its oily green eyes were locked onto me, sensing my blood energy. That feeling of life and death being decided in a split second made me feel strangely alive. As the wolf flew through the air, my mind became incredibly clear. It slammed into the ground and stopped moving within seconds. I held my breath, reached down, and ripped the left ear off the carcass. As I walked, I replayed the fight in my head. Before I gained my new abilities, my reaction time was never that fast. I pushed further into the forest where the beasts were more common. Seeing my provocation, it let out a roar that shook the trees and charged. The bear attacked again and again, but it couldn't even touch a thread of my clothes. The bear roared one last time and tried to lift its paw. It looked up just in time to see my fist expanding in its vision. The bear's massive body slumped to the ground, shaking the earth. A long spear slammed into the spot where I had just been standing. Do it and I might let you live. You don't hunt beasts? Why hunt beasts when robbing is so much faster? I'll give you 3 seconds. I started to speak, but then my eyes landed on his weapon. He realized I was stalling and turned red with rage. I just looked at the weapon with a hint of disappointment, but just as the spear was about to pierce my skin, his vision blurred. Alloy weapons really do feel better than the wooden ones at school. He realized he had messed with the wrong person. Suddenly, he heard a sound like a crashing tidal wave behind him. It struck him with such force that his chest collapsed instantly. He looked up at me as I walked toward him, spear in hand. I looked down at him and gave him a bright, cheerful smile. I stood over the body, waiting for the rush of adrenaline or the wave of nausea. When I killed for the first time, I felt a tremor in my soul. I noticed the backpack the man was wearing and pulled it off his corpse. I wouldn't kill someone without a reason or a grudge. I turned back and quickly searched the rest of his body. Without a second of hesitation, I dumped all 38 points into my blood chi. I was only 1 point away from breaking through to a rank 1 5-fold martial artist. Not only would my strength skyrocket, but I'd finally be able to practice advanced guidance techniques. I hauled a massive boulder over to block the entrance and lit a small campfire. My martial points were back up to 32 after a few more kills. My blood felt like a crashing tidal wave roaring through my arteries. I clenched my fists, feeling a level of strength that made my previous self look like a child. I could shatter the spine of a mid-stage rank 1 beast with a single strike. Slithering in front of me was a black jade giant python, nearly 20 m long. This thing was at the absolute top of the food chain for rank 1 beasts. The alloy spear became a blur, piercing straight through the python's left eye. The python's own tail slammed into its head where I had just been standing. I spent the next 10 minutes playing a deadly game of cat and mouse. My eternal peerless talent was the only reason my combat instincts were this sharp. I looked at the mountain of meat and realized pythons don't have ears to collect for the bounty. My backpack was bulging, stuffed to the brim with over 80 beast ears. They saw my bloody clothes and my overflowing bag, and I saw the greed in their eyes. I didn't want trouble, so I tried to pivot and take another route. A large middle-aged man stepped forward, eager to please his boss. He had been riding Ying's coattails all week, robbing weaker students. He hadn't killed a single beast himself all week, yet his backpack was overflowing with stolen loot. Yang nodded, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. He closed the gap in seconds, throwing a massive punch aimed straight for my spine. I spun on my heel, the alloy spear in my hand becoming a blur of cold steel. His throat worked, trying to squeeze out a final word, but blood flooded his lungs. I looked at the man's backpack, the one stuffed with stolen beast ears. It happened so fast that Young and his 3 remaining lackeys just stood there stunned. Young finally snapped out of it, his face flushing deep red with rage. He turned to the remaining 3, his teeth bared. Sure, their friend had been careless, but it took real power to kill someone that quickly. Young Master Yi, one of them whispered, that kid is probably a genius. If we kill him, toss him into a beast's mouth, and he's gone. They gave chase, but after a few minutes, They realized they couldn't keep up. Drop that bag right now, or I swear to God, I'll kill your entire family. I stopped dead in my tracks. I turned my head slowly, my eyes burning with a sudden violent light. After a moment, Yang turned back toward the edge of the forest. He took the bags, so he has to go back to the base to cash them in. If we wait, he'll slip away under the cover of night. If I see him again, I'm the one who's going to gut him, one of them grumbled. A spear flashed like lightning, driving straight through the heart of the man who had just spoken. Before the body even hit the ground, the shadow had vanished back into the foliage. Yang's voice cracked with a mix of rage and terror. The remaining two martial artists felt the hair on their necks stand up. They moved in a tight formation, eyes darting frantically toward every rustle in the leaves. I was toys with them, shredding their nerves bit by bit. Why won't he just come out and fight like a man? Right, brother. He waited for a response. The third man was lying on the ground, a fresh hole in his chest. They ran until their lungs burned, desperate to reach the light of the base. Yihon let out a shaky breath, a manic grin twitching on his face. The last guard leveled his sword at me, his eyes locked on my every move. I wasn't going to give Yong a quick death, not after he threatened my family. I'll show you who you're messing with. Yang lunged at me, his body blurring with speed. He let out a muffled grunt and staggered back several steps. He hadn't expected a student like me to force him back with a single blow. I flicked my wrist, sending a spray of blood from the spear tip onto the grass. I began to walk toward him, step by deliberate step. A sharp burst of energy shot from his fingertip, traveling at a terrifying speed toward my chest. The energy blast hit a massive tree behind me, snapping the trunk in half like a dry twig. Most martial artists hunting out here came from humble backgrounds and only had access to low-grade techniques. Even a rank 2 martial artist would struggle against this move. I was forced to dodge repeatedly, unable to get close enough to use my spear. He didn't notice that every time he fired, my eyes were locked onto his hand. My reaction was a split second too slow. I raised my own finger and pointed it directly at his incoming blast. How do you know the void-piercing finger? As I did, I tilted my head, refining the technique in my mind with every shot. Yet, here I was mastering it in the middle of a life and death struggle. He looked at my indifferent face and felt a chill run down his spine. This time, the beam was twice as thick and twice as fast. He saw the killing intent in my eyes and began to shake. He sobbed, sweat pouring down his face. "If I kill you," I said softly. I fired several beams in quick succession, piercing his heart and his forehead. The moment he threatened my family, his life was forfeit. My innate talent was incredible, but having the actual manual would allow me to push this technique even further. Suddenly, a mutated black bear lunged from the brush, roaring in fury. A beam of energy the size of a man's arm tore through the air, punching a clean hole through the bear's heart. I looked up and saw the silhouette of the martial artist base in the distance. I pulled the void-piercing finger manual from my pocket one last time. Yo, the man I had just killed, was the leader of this martial artist base. The sun was just starting to crest the horizon when I reached the martial artist base. I watched as a group called the Thunder Squad handed over 4 bags to the staff. A crowd gathered to watch their tally. 67 rank 1 low-tier beasts, 12 rank 1 mid-tier. Only a few days, and they killed that many. The members of the Thunder Squad puffed out their chests, soaking in the admiration. I walked through the gates, my clothes soaked through with dried monster blood. They were so full that fresh blood was still dripping from the seams, staining the ground behind me. They must be unranked beasts, someone suggested, trying to make sense of it. Even if they are unranked, another countered. Killing that many monsters solo, regardless of rank, was a feat of madness. "Sir, please let me take those for you," he said, his voice dripping with respect. A mountain of monster ears spilled onto the floor. The crowd surged forward to see. I don't see a single unranked ear in the pile. He looked at the other 5 bags, his heart visibly racing. He grabbed the remaining 5 bags and dumped them all. "Not one unranked beast," someone whispered, their voice trembling. Then a sharp-eyed man screamed, "Look, is that a black jade python scale?" The black jade python. That was a creature most squads ran away from on sight. The Thunder Squad, who had been feeling bitter about being upstaged, went completely silent. The python has a unique gold-and-silver scale on its forehead. A single high-tier monster ear was only worth 5,000. When he finally looked up, his face was pale with shock. "It would take me 2 years to kill that many. Is this what a genius looks like?" I was one person and I had doubled their haul. I turned to leave and the crowd scrambled to get out of my way, their eyes filled with awe. But just as I reached the exit, a massive boom shook the building. The shout echoed through the plaza, plunging the entire crowd into a dead silence. The other martial artists looked around confused and nervous as staff members scrambled to block every exit. But as I looked around, I saw something else in the eyes of the other martial artists. If it weren't for his uncle's position, someone would have killed him a long time ago. Just because your nephew died, we all have to be searched. He let out a cold snort, his eyes flashing with killing intent. Whoever killed him definitely took it until you're searched and cleared. The staff began moving through the ranks, searching the martial artists one by one. He stood to the side like a hawk, his eyes boring into every face. The staff pointed me out, and Yi's heavy, oppressive gaze landed squarely on my face. You killed all these beasts yourself. He paused, his tone turning icy. A staff member stepped toward me, but I didn't let him get close. They couldn't believe I was actually resisting. He looked at my young face, then back at the mountain of beast ears. A student from First High who could kill that many beasts was a certified genius. I have to conduct this search, but I won't make you do it for nothing. I furrowed my brow, acting as if I were offended and debating whether to accept. Fine. The search was quick. The staff member checked me thoroughly and shook his head at Yichi. Seeing how composed I was, Yichi finally looked away, his suspicion of me completely gone. If I hadn't burned that grade B skill book before coming back, I'd be a corpse right now. On the walk back, I hailed a taxi and watched the base disappear in the rearview mirror. Talent Eternal Unparalleled Bloodshi 103. Skills Raging Sea Spear Great Success. My blood had gone up by 0.8 inches 4 days. I realized it must have been the breakthrough to rank 1 that caused the jump. To reach mid-tier rank 1, I needed 200 blood chi. But between my blood chi, my mental power, and my constitution, these points were going to disappear fast. I pulled up my status panel and funneled a single martial point into my constitution. Blood chi was just a benchmark for rank, but constitution was raw power. If I wanted to be a real fighter, this was where the real investment needed to go. I tried the same with my mental power. Sitting in the passenger seat of the taxi, my body suddenly convulsed. It felt exactly like my rank 1 breakthrough, only more intense. My face stayed youthful and handsome, but my body looked like it belonged to a heavyweight champion. Big brother, he stammered, his voice shaking. I was too busy feeling the raw, explosive energy coursing through my veins. My muscles relaxed, and I returned to my normal, slender frame. If I kept doing this, I'd end up naked in the middle of the street. Finally, I threw my remaining 34 points into mental power, bringing it up to 26.5. By the time I reached the Martial Arts Association building downtown, I felt like a new person. I walked inside, headed for the front desk, and asked for the location of the Rank 1 exam. It was Lai Ming and his master, Jiang Ming. Wait, Lai Ming muttered, staring at my back. When the receptionist pointed them toward the same hallway I had taken, Jiang Ming looked surprised. That kid looks like he's still in high school and he's already at your level. With my mastery of the Thunderbolt Punch, I could drop a student like him in one hit. He had hoped the loss at the underground ring would have changed Lai Ming. For them, this exam was a desperate struggle they had failed multiple times. For a genius like me, it looked like a walk in the park. The exam consists of 2 parts, blood chi and combat power. First candidate, Fangia, blood chi, 102. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes, tuning them out. Li Ming watched the failures with a look of pure contempt. Part of Jiang Ming actually hoped the boy would outscore his student. It wasn't likely that some random kid off the street could just show up and surpass him. As for me, they thought I was just there to test the waters. They called me a genius just for showing up at my age, even if I failed. He took a deep breath and threw a punch. The numbers on the screen blurred upward and finally locked in. That's almost at the level of a mid-stage rank 1 martial artist. Yet, this teenager had nearly doubled their strength on his first try. They might not have been strong, but they were experienced enough to smell a rivalry. I opened my eyes and didn't even look at him. The older men were staring at the monitor, their eyes wide. Jiang Ming frowned, confused by his student's reaction, and looked up at the screen, his pupils dilated. Remembering how he had just acted, he felt like a total clown. Asterisk blood chi is just a foundation. It took him a few seconds to find his voice. Every eye in the room followed me as I stepped up to the heavy punching target. I took a deep breath, crouching slightly like a tiger, ready to pounce. The entire combat power machine, a heavy bolted-down piece of equipment, was ripped from its spot. He had hit that target with everything he had, and it hadn't budged an inch. The official snapped out of his shock and ran over to the machine. He just stared at the numbers, his shoulders shaking. The official stepped aside, revealing the screen to the room. I thought the first guy was a genius. He couldn't understand how my power was so much higher than his. But then, one of the middle-aged men let out a trembling cry that made everyone freeze. The silence was heavy, thick with a shock that seemed to paralyze the room. No special breathing, no channeled energy, just raw, unrefined strength. That was higher than Li Ming's best strike, and he'd used everything he had. His eyes went dark, and he collapsed onto the floor with a dull thud. If I could do that with just my muscles, what would happen when I actually used a technique? I took a deep breath, feeling the power humming under my skin. Most martial artists couldn't control the fundamental strength of their physique like I could. A terrifying surge of energy exploded from my hand. The target let out a high-pitched metallic groan, unable to withstand the pressure. The room stayed silent for a long time, and 30,000 was the benchmark for a rank 1 high-stage martial artist. This kid is a freak, a total monster. The older martial artists were trembling. They were the kind of people who could end a fight in a single blow. He'd wanted to humble the boy, but he hadn't meant to destroy his spirit entirely. He stepped over and gave Li Ming a sharp slap across the face to snap him out of it. Your goal is the monthly exam at Star City High, not competing with a freak like this. I'd been so focused on testing my limits that I forgot the machine might not be able to take the hit. Do you need to fix it for the third round? To the world, she was a powerful leader, but she knew the truth. If Star City didn't produce some incredible talent this year, she was going to lose her position. We had talent, sure, but nothing that could compete with the top-tier cities. An official burst in, gasping for air. Downstairs at the Rank 1 assessment, we found a monster. She stood up so fast her chair flipped over. Then he used a technique and hit 304. To hell with them, they want me to step down. Downstairs, I was being led toward the second floor by an incredibly eager staff member. The other middle-aged martial artists who had passed were following behind. I was just about to reach the landing when I felt a massive presence approaching. I felt a rush of air and my vision blurred for a split second. Her eyes scanned the group of candidates and locked onto me instantly. I didn't expect the top official in the city to greet me personally. Behind us, the middle-aged martial artists who had passed their exams just shook their heads in awe. Su Hong, looking at your age, you must still be in high school, right? He told me he only had 2 mediocre rank 1 students this year. Under her personal supervision, my registration was finished in less than a minute. It wasn't a fortune, but it was more than my uncle and aunt earned in a month. Guidance techniques allow you to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, she explained softly. This wasn't the kind of stuff they printed in our basic school textbooks. The heat was so sudden it scorched the air, leaving behind a faint smell of ozone and burning. Just before it impacted, she blew a soft breath, and the fire vanished instantly. That kind of power was on a completely different level. If we're talking pure destructive power, lightning is number 1. If I was going to fight, I wanted the strongest weapon possible. Everyone wants lightning, Su Hong, but it's not a choice you make. You hit a power level of 1,863 at the beginning stage without using any skills. That suggests you might have a special physique that hasn't fully awakened yet. Fighting someone at a higher rank is as easy as drinking water for them. If I push my body tempering progress to 100%, would that trigger a special physique? It glowed brilliantly with the red light filling about 4/5 of the sphere. My 80% is why I'm a branch president in my 30s. I walked up to the fire crystal and reached out. The moment my skin touched the glass, a blinding, violent crimson light exploded outward. Wu Hian's face went from expectant to completely blank in an instant. She lunged forward and grabbed my shoulders, shaking me violently. Her eyes were burning with a terrifying intensity. It means when you practice the Heaven's Eye breathing technique, you will absorb fire element energy with zero waste. Win's was considered a genius because her 80% affinity allowed her to reach rank 5 in her 30s. They existed, sure, but only in places like the capital or the great martial hubs. If the others found out, they'd try to steal me away. With this and your potential special physique, your path to becoming a powerhouse is guaranteed. If she had 100% affinity, she would have been dancing in the streets. She couldn't comprehend why I was hesitating, but she sighed and stepped back. A split second later, the room cracked with the sound of thunder. It's freaking full again. She looked at me like I was a literal monster. Was it possible that I was perfect in everything? Winston looked like she'd been struck by a physical blow. The wood crystal glowed a deep, vibrant green. The earth crystal turned a solid, heavy brown. There are only 7 elements of energy in the world, and I was a perfect match for every single one of them. Seeing my expression, Wu Linson looked like she wanted to cough up blood. That's the problem, I said, looking at the crystals. She gritted her teeth so hard I thought they might break. Can you give me the breathing techniques for all 7? Probably because the people who wrote the rules never imagined someone like you existed. Even if it's possible, your progress would be 7 times slower. I just want to try them out before I decide. She didn't realize that for me, the normal rules of time and effort didn't apply. No matter how strong you are for your level, a rank 1 can never defeat a grandmaster. If I chose 7, I might not even reach rank 3 before my life was over. She sighed, handing over the manuals for all 7 elements. I suggest you start with the sky technique, she offered. As I began to read, Winston stood to the side and pulled out her phone. She figured that with my perfect compatibility, I might pull it off in 2 or 3. Her eyes went wide with horror. 34 seconds. I can feel the fire essence entering my body and merging with my blood. Try to control that fire essence, she whispered, her voice dry. The sight of that flame seemed to blow a fuse in Wu Linshen's brain. Sister Wu, did I do it? I asked again. She wanted to slap herself for thinking it would take me 2 hours. In the last 30 minutes, her entire understanding of martial arts had been demolished. I could tell she had a sudden violent urge to hit me. She wanted to tell me that minutes wasn't a normal time frame for learning a breathing technique. She couldn't tell me it took her 12 hours, and everyone called her a genius. About 3 or 4 minutes, she lied, her face turning a bit red. Her eyes nearly popped out of her head again. That's good. She walked away and returned with a device that looked like a high-tech helmet. Put it on as I strapped it on. She continued. I needed a lot more points before I hit that threshold. But when she looked at me, she noticed I wasn't disappointed at all. With talent like mine and a steady heart, there was no doubt I would become a powerhouse. When you take that exam, give it everything you've got, she said firmly. I was already planning to go all out, but her tone was intense. Because of this, the human powerhouses on Earth had reached a decision. Star City High was using the monthly exam tomorrow as the primary filter. Even after getting my system, my only goal was to make life better for my family. If the human race lost, everyone I loved would be slaughtered. Sister Wu, thank you for telling me, I said firmly. The next I looked like a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders. I walked past a school where parents were waiting at the gates. My uncle always said that as long as he was there, our home wouldn't collapse. But if I protected my home, who was protecting the rest of humanity, I clenched my fists. If anyone asked me to choose between my family and my race, I'd just kill whoever asked the question. My siblings, Su Hai and Su Ming, were training like possessed spirits. My aunt looked at me with teary eyes, complaining that I looked thinner and asking if I was eating enough at school. My uncle started to shake his head, telling me to save my money for my martial arts training. I get a monthly stipend of 10,000 credits from the government. Wu Linsenian had told me that the training camp used a contribution point system, not cash. My uncle muttered, good, 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 over and over, his voice thick with emotion. That night, we went out to a restaurant and ate until we could barely walk. With my eternal peerless talent, my understanding of techniques was at the peak level. Su Ming threw a punch, and a small crack of thunder echoed in the room. He stood there with his hands on his hips, laughing like a tiny supervillain. I headed back to my room and sat cross-legged on the bed. When I asked Wu Linian for those 7 different guidance techniques at the Martial Arts Association, I wasn't joking. My blood chi was at 123 and my talent was still eternal peerless. If these techniques could be upgraded, she definitely would have told me. By the time I opened my eyes again, the sun was starting to peek over the horizon. All 7 techniques were now at level 1. 7 different types of elemental energy were swirling through my veins, trying to merge with my blood chi. Now I understood why that martial artist Wu Linshen mentioned stayed at rank 1 for decades. I failed over and over, the energy snapping back at me every time. They fought, they hissed. But under my absolute control, they finally fused into a single shimmering force. I'd already broken a rank 1 tester, and I didn't want to pay for damages. I took a deep breath, balled my fist, and let the sparks fly. This was a 500-point jump, putting me on par with a mid-stage rank 1 martial artist. I focused every ounce of my will, merging the two powers in my fist. I stood there stunned. 3,000 was the benchmark for a high-stage rank 1 martial artist, someone with at least 300 bloodsheet. I needed more martial points to upgrade them, and the upcoming monthly school exam was the perfect place to earn them. Soon after, I was walking Su Ming and Su Hai to school. He looked a bit surprised about those exam fees for the 5 elective categories. Teacher Liang looked at the stack of cash, then looked at me, his expression softening. "You've been gone for a few days, so you missed a lot," Shenlin said, leaning in close. He even got Chin Tian, the thunderclap punch master, to give them private lessons. He paused, sighing heavily, but none of them compared to Qin Shan and Li Tuesday. This monthly exam is going to be a one-man show for those two. I started to say something, but our teacher, Lai Ming, walked into the room. When we reached the sports field, it was a sea of black hair and school uniforms, rare pills, Heil manuals, and even grandmasters serving as personal mentors. The top 3 students from this exam will earn a spot in the Star City training camp. Everyone's eyes drifted toward the front of the pack where the elite class stood. I hope you're still that confident after I knock you into the dirt. With those 2 monsters around, everyone else is just fighting for 3rd place. As the students began drawing lots for their matchups, Principal Li stepped over to Chinchin. Still no sign of that genius. I even looked at the ones who dropped out of the martial arts track. How do Liu and Chanshan compare to the others in the upcoming camp? If only that 9-star genius belonged to him, he wouldn't have to worry. A mocking voice cut through the air. Zhang Ming scanned the field, his eyes lingering on the elite class students before he smirked. My students could still beat your young city brats with their eyes closed. Zhang Ming's eyes lit up. Once your exam is over, your number 1 student can have a friendly match with them. The other was Lai Ming, who looked calm and indifferent. But hey, it should be a fair fight against your geniuses, right? Liu and Qin Shan weren't at that level yet. If he backed down now, he was admitting his school was trash. My students have strong minds. Principal Liang Shan barked, his voice stiff with pride. The principal watched them walk away, his face turning a dark shade of bruised purple. He cursed under his breath, looking out at the students in the genius class with a heavy sigh. Little did he know, I was standing right in front of him, down on the field. A regular student like me going up against a quasi-martial artist in the 1st round. If you get hurt, it'll ruin your training for the rest of the month. Match 665, Chin Pong versus match 666, Su Hong, get to the ring immediately. I didn't answer. Before the words had even fully left his mouth, I moved. Shin Pong stared up at the stage, his mind a total blank. I had just tossed a quasi-martial artist aside with a single casual palm strike. A look of genuine shock surfacing in his eyes. As the matches continued, the genius class students started sweeping through the competition. But on the other side of the brackets, I was doing the exact same thing. My teacher, Li Ming, was blinking rapidly, looking like he had seen a ghost. As I kept winning, more and more eyes from other classes started shifting toward my ring. He watched for a second, but his attention quickly drifted back to the genius class. Most of the regular students had been eliminated, while the genius class remained untouched. Match 666, Su Hong versus match 28, Lei Kai-shan. Getting this far was impressive for a regular kid, but this is the end of the line. He's one step away from being a rank 1 martial artist. To them, if I were actually strong, I would have been in the genius class from the start. With the strength you've shown today, you'll have no problem getting into a 2nd-tier martial arts university. He looked proud, even if he didn't understand how I'd gotten this strong. Lai Kai-shan was already there, arms crossed, chin tilted high. Look at this guy acting like he's number 1 in the school. Even the bottom of the genius class is a level you regular students can't comprehend. His eyes widened as he realized my speed was beyond anything he had anticipated. One kick, he flew off the stage and slammed face first into the dirt. They hated his arrogance, but they never actually thought I could win, let alone win like that. Su Hong is the first regular student to take down a genius class member. But teacher Li Ming was the one who finally spoke, his voice trembling with realization. I was a rank 1 martial artist standing in the middle of a regular high school exam. A rank 1 martial artist had just emerged from the regular class. On the spectator platform, Principal Li Qingshan's eyes nearly popped out of his head. If he had realized my potential sooner, he could have had Chunyan personally teach me the Benlei punch. He looked at the principal, clearly annoyed at being treated like a tool for the school's prestige. He felt like he'd seen me somewhere before, but the memory remained just out of reach. Aside from me, every single student from the regular classes had been eliminated. The other elite students who had mastered the Benlei punch were only mildly impressed. However, those who hadn't mastered the punch yet looked at me with genuine fear. They started praying under their breaths, hoping the next round would pair me against someone who could actually take me out. He had broken through to rank 1 days ago, and more importantly, he had mastered the Benlei punch. The elite students who feared me let out a collective sigh of relief. I was an unknown, and in a fight, the unknown is terrifying. Back in my class section, my teacher, Li Ming, was beaming. As we stood opposite each other, his face was set in a mask of grim determination. He lunged forward, his feet driving into the stone with explosive power. He's using the Benlei punch right out of the gate. To meet a grade C martial technique with a basic punch was madness. Chin saw me coming and didn't pull back. The students leaned forward, waiting to see me fly off the stage, but I didn't move an inch. Skin was torn and blood dripped steadily onto the stage. Even the top two, Li Tu and Xinshan, finally looked at me with real cold apprehension. Up on the platform, Principal Li kicked his chair over as he stood up. It's stronger than most mid-stage rank 1 warriors. Principal Li swallowed hard. He had been worried that his top students were only average compared to the rest of the city. Xinshan warned, cutting through the principal's joy. No matter how strong she is without a proper moveset, she'll hit a wall. Because of that, my chances of making the top 3 for the training camp were still a total mystery. He looked worried, his brow furrowing deep as he thought about the missed opportunity. I could see them whispering, praying to any god that would listen that they wouldn't draw my name. He didn't want the school's only special constitution to get knocked out before the training camp. His Benlei punch, an exality, and his vitality was a staggering 120 points. On the other side of the arena, the genius students from the elite class were suddenly grinning. They figured I might have beaten Qin, but there was no way I was touching Qin Shan. He looked at me, his eyes solemn and heavy, feeling weak. Once I beat Su Hong, you're next. He never imagined one of his regular students would make it this far, let alone challenge the school's second-best fighter. He actually slapped himself across the face to see if he was dreaming. He threw a flurry of punches, and I heard 3 distinct cracks of thunder echoing in the air. I relied purely on my physical power, meeting his fists with my own asterisk, bang 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 asterisk. We stood our ground, trading blows in a stalemate for 10 seconds. Flames erupted from his knuckles as he swung his Benlei punch. Qin Shan had been hiding a massive trump card. Principal Li looked up, and his pupils shrunk to pinpricks. Down you go. Qin Shan screamed, throwing a flame-wrapped punch straight at my face. I threw a punch to meet his, but this time I didn't hold back. Before he could even process the shock, the sheer force of my strike hit him like a freight train. Students stood there with their mouths hanging open, unable to find words. A special constitution with immense strength and the most powerful offensive attribute, lightning. Principal Li finally found his voice. He didn't care about the student who had mastered the technique anymore. Principal Li's smile was so wide it looked like it would split his face. If she doesn't know them, we'll teach her. He wanted to see how fast I could learn compared to the others. I thought she was a dark horse, but she's a freaking dragon. But now, a student from the regular class was about to take the throne. Amidst the chaos, under the care of the medics, Qin Shan slowly opened his eyes. He sighed, finally accepting his defeat, and slowly stood up to return to the elite class section. So what? Qin Shan stared at him, confused by his arrogance. If I couldn't beat her, what makes you think you can? Leoda's smile only widened. He just kept that smug, winning smile on his face. The referee's voice boomed through the arena, calling Li Tu to the stage. I had finished my fight with Qin Shan so quickly that the bar was set high. But before that student could even finish his sentence, a sound like a crack of silent thunder erupted. His eyes were rolled back in his head, completely unconscious before he even hit the ground. Leo's rushing thunder punch is definitely at the subtle level. In terms of raw lethality, the metal element was just as deadly as fire, second only to my lightning. The final was shaping up to be a clash of titans. Principal Lee rubbed his chin, a grin spreading across his face. On the other, we have a special constitution with immense strength and lightning. After seeing what we were capable of, most of the elite class students simply forfeited when they were matched against us. Su Hong versus Lei Tu. The referee's voice was high-pitched with excitement as he made the announcement. Show the elite class that a regular student can take the crown. The regular students were red-faced and screaming, waving their fists in the air. Up on the stands, Principal Lee watched with a nostalgic smile. Su Hong's physical strength is monstrous, but Liu has pushed my rushing thunder punch to the subtle level.